We are in the male slave dungeon finally. And I said earlier on that over here we have 5 chambers, that is 5 separate chambers. And this is the first one. And I said each of the 5 chambers held 200 male captives at the time. And I believe you all know very well that this light wasn't here that time. So they had their source of light and ventilation from the place where it goes back. And they all lived in this murky dungeon for 3 months. So every 3 months, the enslaved Africans were shipped from here to the Caribbeans, Europe, and the Americas for auctioning. But because this light wasn't here that time, I would like to turn off the light for just 10 seconds for you to experience the darkness, and I will soon be with you again. So the lights will be off for just 10 seconds, just for you to experience it.
God save us. The source of light. The angels are around us. So this is for day. So in the night it will see us.
Ladies and gentlemen, the enslaved Africans were branded by their respective slave masters. So in our museum gallery, we have a branded iron in the museum gallery. That is branded iron. And that very time, most of the slave masters had their own different ways to identify their captives. Some used the earring on them for easy identification. Others went in for the branding iron itself on their body. You see, the branding iron, it bears the slave master's initials, his initial under it. Some came like ITE. We had QI. We had JSS, simply means John Smith slave, that is someone's property. The iron was then inserted into a very hot fire. From the fire is either your chest or at the back it was stamped just to identify it. And during the branding, the soldiers selected the male captives, the strong from the weak again. And they held the strong slaves in the first chamber here. But because they were strong, those in this first chamber were chained and shackled. They all defecated on the floor. Our people vomited here. They also ate and slept in their own mess for 3 months. We have a very white mark on the wall. Please, you look on this side. Look on this side. There's a white mark on the wall here. Sorry? Yep. Hello, can you go back a little? Thank you very much. We have a very white mark on the wall here. This side, there's a white mark here. Alright. I hope you all can see it.
Yeah.
Right. I have placed my hand on this white mark now, ladies and gentlemen. From the level my hand is to the floor, it was filled with choked toilet, urine and vomit to this height, all over the place. In which our people had no option than to live in their own mess till the end of the slavery. So where we are now has been excavated. It was done in 1974, and they threw the mess into the sea. But that very time, we had 2 main categories of slaves who lived in Cape Coast Castle. We had a commercial slave and a domestic slave. The commercial ones were made to be in their dungeon always. But the domestics were able to work right within the graveyard of the castle. And they served the commercial slaves with their food. Our people were fed on food like boiled cassava, plantain, rice, yam, fish, and beans. But the only daylight the commercial slaves saw was during the few intermittent moments they spent on the graveyard to work. Most of them became partially blind here due to their long stay in the dungeons. Surprisingly, Surprisingly, right on top of the male slave dungeon was a church. Right on top of this dungeon was a church. We call it Church of England. Church of England. And they formed a very vibrant society. That is the Society for the Propagation of the Gospel, SPG for short. So whilst church members were praising Almighty God up, others were down here crying for help. I always call it heaven and hell on earth. We have a spy hole up there, spy hole. It served as a better supervision for the English soldiers. But there were moments in which the male slaves became very aggressive, and they would lynch any officer who entered this dungeon in protest against their maltreatment. And in such moment, they were denied of food for some few days to make them weak and to make the dungeons accessible. Please, you look on the floor. Look on the floor. We have a trench on the floor, trench. It served as a drainage system. When it rains, rainwaters find its way up there here. So it washes the surface of their mess through the trench into the sea. But the trench was of no use that time because their mess covered it to that height. So this is the first chamber. In all, we had 1,000 men in the male dungeon during the slavery. Please, are there any questions?